The defeat no one saw coming. General Zarak stood before the Supreme War Council of the Zalkith Dominion, his crimson armor tarnished and cracked, his reptilian skin still bearing the scars of battle. The High Chamber, a vast expanse of black steel and towering spires, had never before heard such silence. The council members, the most ruthless strategists in the known galaxy, awaited his report with expectant glares. He was the first to break the silence. His voice, usually sharp and commanding, wavered. "We are finished." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, but none spoke aloud. The Zalkith were a warrior race, undefeated for over 1,000 cycles. To hear such words from one of their highest generals was unthinkable. The Supreme Warlord, a towering figure clad in ceremonial obsidian armor, narrowed his glowing yellow eyes. "Explain yourself, General Zarak. Your fleet was the largest ever sent for planetary conquest. The humans were to be another insignificant species added to our dominion. What happened?" Zarak inhaled deeply, his mandibles twitching with unspoken dread. "The invasion began as expected. Our forces descended upon Earth, overwhelming their defenses. Human men fought bravely, but they fell as all others had before them. We crushed their armies, reduced their cities to rubble. Their leaders fled, their weapons proved ineffective. Victory was within our grasp." He paused, his three-clawed hand gripping the hilt of his ceremonial dagger. And then something changed. A hush fell over the chamber. It was not the remaining armies that resisted us. It was not their advanced technology, nor a hidden alliance with another species. His eyes flickered with something close to fear. It was their women. The silence turned to confusion. The Supreme Warlord scoffed. "They are females? You claim our empire was bested by breeders and caretakers." Zarak shook his head, his voice firm despite his fear. "That is what we assumed as well. We believed the remaining resistance forces were broken. Then the human women took up arms." One of the council members sneered. "A desperate act by a doomed race." "No," Zarak whispered. "Not desperation. Awakening." The chamber grew cold. "We did not realize it at first. They fought with a ferocity that should have been impossible for an untrained civilian force. They used tactics we could not predict, improvising weapons, using their terrain to their advantage. They had no fear, no hesitation. They struck with precision, with a rage that eclipsed even the most seasoned Zalkith warriors." He took another breath, forcing himself to continue. "At first, we assumed it was an anomaly, isolated pockets of resistance. But it spread. City after city, battle after battle, human women were not just resisting. They were evolving. Faster, stronger, tactical beyond reason. They moved in ways we could not comprehend. It was as if they remembered something ancient, something lost in their own history, buried deep within their blood." The Supreme Warlord leaned forward. "And you're suggesting, what? That human women possess some hidden genetic weapon? Some long-forgotten warrior instinct?" Zarak looked up, his glowing red eyes filled with something the warlords had never seen before, true fear. "I'm suggesting they're not what we thought they were. We believe them weak, but they are not merely warriors. There's something far worse." The chamber darkened as the council absorbed his words. The Supreme Warlord's expression turned grave. "You speak as if these humans are not just resisting. You speak as if they are hunting us." Zarak's claws tightened around his dagger. "They are." A cold realization swept through the council. The Zalkith Dominion, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, had finally met their match. And they had awoken something that could never be. The awakening of the dormant war deities. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the data streaming across her tablet, her hands trembling. The battlefield reports, the genetic analysis, none of it made sense. Yet it was undeniable. The women fighting on the front lines were changing. She looked up at the makeshift war room deep inside the underground bunker. Screens flashed with combat footage from across the planet. Every report told the same story. Human women were outperforming their male counterparts in battle at an exponential rate. Reflexes beyond recorded human limits. Tactical awareness that defied probability. Endurance that should have been impossible. "This isn't just adrenaline," she whispered. "This is something else." Commander Jason Park leaned over her shoulder, eyes scanning the same reports. "What are you saying, Doctor? That our women are mutating?" "No," Elena said. "I'm saying they're remembering." Park frowned. "Remembering what?" Elena turned to face him, her dark eyes filled with conviction. What they were before civilization tamed them. Something ancient. Something buried in our DNA, waiting for the right moment to wake up. The Zalkith gave us that moment. And now, they've unleashed something they can't control. Park exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his stubbled chin. "So, you're telling me our greatest weapon against the invaders was sitting right under our noses this whole time?" Elena smirked grimly. "Not under your noses. Underestimating us has always been your biggest mistake." On the surface, the war had shifted. Zalkith forces, once unstoppable, now faced resistance beyond anything their war machines were designed to handle. Women, armed with whatever they could find, were moving with preternatural speed, striking with surgical precision. One squad of civilian women had decimated an entire Zalkith outpost with nothing but farming tools and homemade explosives. Another had hijacked a warship, reprogramming its systems faster than any recorded Zalkith engineer. It was as if they were built for war, as if something inside them had been waiting for this. And it was only getting stronger. The fall of the invaders. The sky burned with the remnants of the battle. Smoke curled into the heavens, carrying the scent of destruction and victory alike. The invaders, once an unstoppable force, now lay scattered across the battlefield, defeated, broken, and in retreat. Their towering war machines, once symbols of terror, now smoldered in the dying light of the sun. Commander Auric surveyed the field from a ridge, his battle-worn armor streaked with dust and blood. He could hear the cheers of his warriors below, their voices rising in triumph. They had done what many believed impossible. They had driven the invaders back. The battle had not been swift, nor had it been easy. For weeks, the invaders had crushed every defense, their relentless march leaving cities in ruin. But Auric had seen their weakness, not in their weapons, but in their arrogance. They had underestimated the resilience of those they sought to conquer. And so, he had set the trap. At dawn, the resistance had struck with every force they could muster. Hidden trenches, flaming barricades, and collapsing cliffs had turned the battlefield into a graveyard for the invaders. Their mighty war beasts, engineered for conquest, had been lured into narrow ravines where they became easy prey for firebombs and spears. Their soldiers, so assured of their superiority, had found themselves overwhelmed in brutal hand-to-hand combat against warriors fighting for their very survival. But the true turning point had come when the invaders' command ship had been sabotaged from within. General Varric, the enemy leader, had realized too late that one of his own men had turned against him. As the ship fell from the sky in a blaze of fire, the invaders lost not just their leader, but their will to fight. Now, as the survivors fled, hunted by the victorious warriors of a land they had sought to conquer, Auric turned to his second-in-command, Syria. "We won the battle," he said, voice heavy with exhaustion. "But the war is not over." Syria nodded, watching the distant horizon where the last of the enemy's ships disappeared. "They will return," she said grimly. "Then we will be ready," Auric vowed. As the sun dipped below the ruins of the battlefield, the warriors of the resistance stood victorious. But in their hearts, they knew this was only the beginning, the confession and the reckoning. The room was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the far wall. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone, thick like the heavy summer air before a storm. Emma took a deep breath, her fingers curled into the fabric of her dress, and exhaled slowly. It was time. "I have something to confess," she said, her voice steady but low. Across from her, Daniel's face hardened, his eyes narrowing as if bracing for impact. The others in the room, Margaret, Richard, and Henry, shifted uncomfortably, exchanging wary glances. This was what they had all feared. They had known, deep down, that something had been lurking beneath the surface, waiting to rise like a buried truth that refused to stay hidden. "It was me," Emma continued, her gaze locked onto Daniel's. "I was the one who—" "Don't," Daniel cut in, his voice sharp, almost desperate. "You don't have to do this." "But I do," she insisted. "Lying about it won't change what happened. It's time you knew the truth." A hush fell over the room as Emma laid out the confession, each word carving through the air like a knife. Gasps escaped lips, hands clutched at chests. Richard turned away, his expression unreadable, while Margaret's eyes brimmed with unshed tears. And then silence. Heavy, ominous. The reckoning had begun. Daniel rose slowly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. His face was unreadable, his jaw tight. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Emma swallowed. "Yes. And you're ready for what comes next?" She hesitated, but only for a moment. "I am." The storm that had been building was finally here, and no one